Well, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Taha Bawa. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Goodwall. We're a social enterprise that has a mission to level the playing field for youth globally. We serve approximately 2 million youth around the world through a mobile-first platform and leveraging partnerships such as Generation Unlimited and Yoma, who've kindly helped organize this today and bring together these amazing speakers. Just before we start with the panel, a few points that I wanted to cover. When looking to rewire education, we need to rethink about how youth engage, or rather partner, within the decision-making process. And as we look to redefine the education curriculums, the products that will help them maximize their potential and hopefully push society forward, we really look at them as partners and not just listen to them from a tokenistic perspective, or even not listen to them sometimes. We must really do that. We may be able to leverage this unique opportunity post-pandemic, where there is perhaps a window and a little bit of propensity to change or to accept change in the way decision-making processes are taking place, to allow them to be included. And something I know we will be talking about today is how to have proper representation of youth within those decision-making processes. So across genders, across socioeconomic backgrounds, across geographies, to make sure that the youth is properly represented at every level and that they are actually prepared to be able to speak at those different levels. At Goodwall, we are a youth-led organization. My brother and I, who co-founded this organization, we were youth at the time. I don't know if we still constitute as youth. Most of our colleagues were youth. Our stakeholders were obviously young people. Before releasing every product, we used to have, we still have, we send out the designs to our advisory who are youth, and get their feedback, their opinions before we actually launch into development. We have a weekly call with our advisory, which make up of youth. We look at the data, and we really try and include them. I'm looking forward to hearing how the different stakeholders, the different organizations here engage youth and bring them into the decision-making process. So, I am really excited by this panel. We have the private sector, we have policy, we have youth champions, and entrepreneurs. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. So without further ado, let me please introduce the different members here. Starting off with Rolake, Rosiji, CEO of Jobberman, Ted Chaiban, the UNICEF MENA Regional Director, Adebola Williams, CEO of Red, and Ilwad Elman of the Elman Peace Center. Thank you so much. So let me start with Rolake. As a young CEO, sorry, am I coming in and out, or can you hear me relatively consistently? You can? Okay, cool. I'm getting used to this. There were only four, so I'm the odd one out. I hope this works. Let's try. So, Rolake, as a young CEO yourself, how have you fostered an environment that nurtures or encourages youth-led initiatives, youth leadership, youth engagement within your company, Jobberman, today?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Taha. Yes, so at Jobberman today, and just to give you a little bit of background about what Jobberman is, Jobberman's an online recruitment platform based in Nigeria, and we're actually the largest online recruiters in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of number of employers that are using us to look for employees, and also in terms of the job seekers registered on our platform looking for jobs. So we've got about 70,000 employers registered with us and about 2.7 million job seekers looking for jobs. So how do we go about making sure that the decisions we make are youth-led? How do we incorporate youth into our plans? Well, we really try and foster an environment where we're asking youth for their perspectives. We do a lot of webinars with our community who are registered on our website. We do careers fairs, and we also make sure that we're inviting them in to crucial decisions. So, I mean, if I can give an example, I would say that, one of the ways in which we make this work practically is just to get out of the way. So although, thank you, I am a young CEO, but there's a lot younger, smarter people on my team. So sometimes I just have to get out of the way and let them lead. And we actually have a very open policy. If you have an idea of a cool webinar you want to run, you can just suggest it. And then we'll bring in some important thought leaders that you can interview to make it more relevant, to get more people registered. And then we do the same for careers fairs. We'll run a large careers fair and we'll make sure that the top employers in Nigeria are present, the places that people really want to work, and then we'll open up the forum or the Zoom call for people to ask questions and just make it really interactive. And then also something else we do more internally, because of course we are very much a customer-focused platform. Our success depends on job seekers finding the jobs they really want, employers finding the best of the best candidates. But internally as well, the way we run is to make sure that everyone in the organization really has a chance to share their opinions. So we have the monthly town halls, which are very informal. I try not to speak first. I try and speak as late as possible in the conversations to really get people to share their opinions and their honest thoughts.
Thank you so much for that. It's really interesting how you said, your customers, even if the clients who are paying may be corporates, your customers, your principal stakeholder are the job seekers.
Yes.
And that's really great to hear. In terms of rethinking pathways for youth or alternative livelihoods for youth, have you given this some thought? So beyond the traditional career, we just heard in the other panel, in the other session about the flexible work, moving away from the 40-hour one career for 40 years. Have you given that some thought, and have you engaged youth within that decision making or that thought process?
Yeah, great question. So we've actually published 2 reports recently on the impact of COVID-19 on working trends in Nigeria, and another report on the digital skills gap across Nigeria to really try and understand what the data is telling us about changes in work for the future. And what we've learned, just like we discussed in the other panel, is this bog standard 40 hours a week sitting in an office, it doesn't exist anymore already, and it's going to continue to not exist in the future. It's going to be more of a hybrid way of work, more flexibility, and really for me this is a great thing, especially in a traditional culture like Nigeria, where really what you do requires your boss to see you face to face. So it's a new thing to trust someone to sit at home and work online. So what thought have we given to pathways in light of what the data is telling us about flexible working and working from home? At Jobberman, we're really thinking carefully about making sure that candidates who come and sign up on our website looking for a job have access to upskilling. So we launched last year a soft skills training course, and soft skills is really a little bit of a misnomer because it incorporates everything about your personal well-being, how to work in a team, how to manage your own time, how to even draft your CV and engage with employers on LinkedIn. And we've got really positive feedback. We've had farmers taking the course. We've had a young person in Kaduna, which is in the north of Nigeria, who took the course when he was unemployed. After he completed the course, he then got a job with the Kaduna state government, and now he's helping us access the governor in order to implement this training on a much larger scale. So we have a goal of getting 5 million people trained on this soft skills and employability course by 2025. This year we've trained 208,000, which is great for us because when I last was speaking with Gen U in July, we had only trained 90,000, so we're really pleased that it's growing fast. And the pathway as we see it is after you get trained on this soft skills course, it doesn't end there. You don't just want a certificate, so the candidate will get an electronic certificate, and then we will boost their profile online with our algorithms for their CVs to come up higher up when employers are looking for candidates. So we're pushing more jobs their way so that they have a better chance of getting the jobs on our platform.
There's so much to talk about and pick up on, and looking forward to coming back to this, but thank you so much for that. Ted, in terms of youth engagement with UNICEF, what is UNICEF, or what are you looking at in terms of getting youth engaged in your decision-making process and in your program design even?
So I think, first of all, thanks for having us at this panel, and it's a real pleasure to be with this group here. I think in everything that UNICEF does, it tries to have young people as part of the decision-making process, whether it's its own program designs for what its own purposes, or indeed the things it does in a given country or a given setting. And I think there's several examples of that, from making sure that young people are part of participatory action research, where there's different topics such as the transition from learning to earning, or the issue of mental health, and they're part of committees with government to try to design the best options available. Whether it's young people having access to different volunteering platforms. So in Jordan, for example, we've established with government a platform called Nahnu, meaning ourselves. And the idea there is to try to connect young people and their desire to contribute, specifically during the time of COVID, with opportunities to contribute, whether it's helping address the issue of vaccine hesitancy, or helping the elderly with their shopping, or indeed getting from place to place safely. So, in that case, over 1 million hours of volunteer time has been sourced through this platform, 40,000 young people engaging in volunteering activities. Or whether it's working on the issue of integrating the life skills into the curriculum of different education systems, these transferable skills that are going to make education relevant and of quality for people to be able to do that transition. So in places like Morocco and Egypt, the whole curriculum has been redesigned to focus on transferable skills, and young people, as well as the private sector for that matter, but young people have been part of that design, have been asked, what is your view of the best skills and the way that you would benefit from them in the most direct way possible.
Thank you so much for that, Ted. I mean, what you're describing reminds me a lot about how Generation Unlimited, I guess, connected to UNICEF or somewhat affiliated with UNICEF, has gone about how they design their initiatives, their programs. And if I think of YOMA, which is what we're part of, it really was youth-led in terms of thinking through what are the problems, what needs to happen. That's great to hear. And in terms of coming back to what I asked earlier, we take a private company and how they create, how you create and foster an environment that allows youth to be leaders and to be the best versions of themselves. How do you see that within UNICEF or within the programs to really create a conducive environment for youth to take on leadership opportunities?
So, I mean, firstly, I think any social movement we have nowadays, young people are doing it for themselves. I mean, from the environment to Black Lives Matter to gender and issues of equity, young people are shaping the agenda. They don't, in some ways, need a conducive environment. They're doing it. But when it comes to a conducive environment, I would maybe focus on three things. Firstly is to create opportunities for not just young people, but adolescents to get involved in local governance. Whether that local governance is your school, or how it's managed, whether it's municipal councils, but how do you create local opportunities for people not to have to go out of their way to try to find those opportunities to contribute? That's number one. Number two is really make it easy to register organizations. Make it easy to set up your own NGO, to set up your own community group. Don't drown people in paperwork. Don't see it as a threat to governance that young people want to be active and they want to contribute. And then number three, in terms of a conducive environment, I would say, is this notion of having an education which is skill-based, which is relevant to young people. I mean, I think the whole theme of the conference here is, how can we rewire education? How can we have an education system that actually speaks to young people? And how do we integrate notions of entrepreneurship, notions of communications, notions of collaboration into the curriculum, so that as you learn, you're learning something relevant to your future. I think in one of the opening videos, there was some young person saying, I want to learn how to open a business. I want to learn how to pay my taxes. Those are practical things that young people need through their education system. That's how we create a conducive environment.
That's really great to hear. When I think, just picking up on what you said, it makes me think of some of the youth we serve who've started drop shipping businesses, and to teach other youth how to do drop shipping. And these micropreneurs that especially in places where there aren't enough opportunities. Just one question maybe for both of you. Within the context of regions, so we take the MENA region, lots of youth, lots more coming through. Even with certifications, there's this worry that there aren't enough jobs within the local context. We were talking with Rome and your colleagues about, is there an opportunity to also look at remote opportunities, especially digital remote opportunities? Because just coming back to, yes, we want local, but is there a chance? I know it hasn't been done yet for youth, but do you think there's an opportunity there?
Yeah, I think absolutely there is. We're now in a global world of work. And yeah, definitely, even at Jobberman in Nigeria, as much as we're most interested in getting Nigerians jobs in Nigeria, we've been approached by recruiters in Canada, we've been approached by recruiters in the UK with the talent shortage with truck drivers and nurses in the UK. And I'm very happy to engage in these conversations because we have to look at the mere facts. The number of jobs are not growing at the same rate as the number of people entering the job market. So we cannot just rely on jobs in Nigeria or in sub-Saharan Africa overall. So I think one of the really special opportunities that we get with these online platforms is we can help connect young people across the world. And they're doing it themselves anyway. They don't need Jobberman to help them do it. So if Jobberman doesn't assist them, they'll find other ways to do it. Right. So actually I can share that we are working with a Canadian recruitment provider to try and provide some of these remote jobs to Nigerians in 2022.
Fantastic. No, that's great. That's great to hear. I mean, I know UNICEF Generation Limited, we've really looked at ecopreneurship, looked at how to create those micropreneurs and really alternative livelihoods. And coming back to it, we might not be able to get enough revenue to have a full livelihood from, or full fair wage from one source, but perhaps a few can combine to fill the gap, hopefully, for some of those who aren't being served by the traditional local job market. Thank you for that. Well, now on to this side. I'm excited. I'm excited to ask some questions here. What are some of the platforms that youth need today to be heard? You have an incredible background in getting voices heard. What are your views on that, particularly on the continent, on the African continent or sub-Saharan Africa?
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
I think so.
Okay, great, excellent. You know, I think young people are already being heard. Young people already have understood the power of their current time and the platforms, and we're using it actively. From Black Lives Matter to End SARS in Nigeria, young people are galvanizing, young people are making demands, young people are staying at it until they get solutions. What the generation might then need to realize is that beyond organizing and activism, there is another level of engagement on the seat at the table where decisions that led you to the street in the first place are made. So sometimes on the continent or around the world, we're advocating, we're fighting injustice, we're complaining, you know, activism about something. And it's like the mentality in the church where you pray so hard, but when it comes to time to engage at the level of governance, you say, it is not for me. It is not clean, it is tough, it is difficult. The heavy lifting that we do in organizing, in activism, is the same heavy lifting that you need to then engage in getting a seat at the table so that we can reduce the problems that we are advocating for. So the generation already has an understanding of the tools of the time, social media, pop culture, you know, convergence, technology, payment platforms. Because fundraising for activism used to be a problem. But now, young people have built their own banks. Because the institution will always protect itself and not allow you access to power and access to finance. And so young people now have access to finance through tech platforms. What is missing is access to government. And because we know, or we've seen based on history, that oftentimes, power is not served a la carte. You've got to go. It's like a buffet. And the queue is so long. So you need to convince people why you should come to the front and get to the front and then get the opportunity at the table to determine how the food is dispersed. So my biggest call to young people around the world will be to begin to use the same power in galvanizing and organizing for activism to get into government, even if you have to engage with the big parties. Because sometimes the conversation as well is usually, the big parties are already set in their ways, we want to set up our own party. I say that's fine. We must do it concurrently. On one hand, you can set up your new ideology and your new system, your new vehicle. On the other hand, you must send some people to go and mix with the system and infiltrate the system so that they can even bring you some tips, some skills, some access, some intelligence to empower yourself in building what you're building.
Thank you so much for that. No, that's really interesting. We talk about, going from that activism and joining government. We could almost take that there's almost an analogy to be had with idealistic, engaged youth who want to join large international organizations, one could say, that want to join some corporates or even startups that are supposedly trying to change the world. And then they come in and they face such strong resistance to change within those organizations that causes incredible disheartedness, lack of spirit, and then there's a pessimism, cynicism that is created, and this just grows. How can one overcome that within the context of if they were to join government, within, especially in governments which are not necessarily conducive to change, how can one keep the hope, keep the idealism? And I guess that can be...
Change is not conducive.
Yeah.
Take that again. Change is not conducive. There is nothing big that you want to achieve in life that would not require tenacity, resilience, would not require humility, would not require you looking away, and focusing on your goal. And particularly on my continent, I work with young people in youth development. We've done that now for 18 years. And when we began our journey, we began with empowering young people as entrepreneurs. We spent a lot of time in storytelling because stories are important. Stories shape the world. Stories provoke action. Stories determine the perception capital that people cash into for action. And we built this perception around young people as superstars, as unstoppable. And that perception is what has led a lot of young people in Nigeria to be able to walk into rooms and demand and take their space. And then we evolved into building the power for activism and helping young people find their voice to be able to demand and hold government accountable. And then we as an organization then moved into another phase of government engagement. So at the moment, we work across the continent in elections, helping governments win election, opposition party, change government into a new regime, good governance, continuity in different countries, most recently in Senegal with President Macky Sall. And our experience has shown us that you must get access into that room.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a typical example. You work for a president, and he becomes president. But if the team that he gets is not young, is not visionary, is not innovative, then you begin to question yourself that where is the country going?
Yeah.
So it's a two-way street where we must hold such leaders to engage and empower young people, but young people as well must put themselves forward and be focused on their mission. I have tons of stories of young people in Nigeria who've gone into office in Kenya and different countries, and they have faced immense pressure to be corrupt, to bend, and they stuck their guns. Okay. And the system in some cases bent, in some cases got too hot and they left, but they are coming back again. Because we must give our all if we really want to change something that we can all agree is difficult.
No, that's a great message. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Ilwad, we talked about...
Ilwad uses peace, no force.
Ilwad, when we heard about getting youth engagement in corporates, in the work that UNICEF's doing, in policy. When we think of youth, you work with some of the most disadvantaged, underprivileged youth. And when we think of youth on the move in particular, that may have moved because of conflict, that may have moved because of climate change, how can we engage them within the design process or the policy making process?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And maybe just on Adebola's last point, we actually got a chance to collaborate recently on peace building and leveraging and harnessing the power of storytelling to also influence peace building processes. So everything that he spoke to also resonates in this sector of building peace on our continent. To your question of how do we engage young people that are coming from marginalized backgrounds, the youth that I work with are young people that are affected by war, survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, refugees, internally displaced people. I would flip the question around, though, of not looking at them as a separate group of young people. They are still young people that have the same needs, the same desires. And what we need to do better is to make the opportunity for education and access to work more accessible to them. We need to cater to their realities because it is not their fault that they are in these conditions. So I think that's the basis of where we start our conversations, making schools available in settlements, making sure that the curriculums and the tools that they're given are ones that are reflective of their needs. Ted spoke about the need for curriculums to be more reflective of the desires of young people. With the youth that I engage with, they're not interested in learning about colonial history. They want to learn about how to actually turn, how to have access to seed funding to start their own business. Yeah. Children as young as 15 years old want to enter the workforce. So it's looking at how do we make education adaptable to the circumstances that they live in today.
That's really interesting. Well, we need to sync up on the seed funding piece because we have some grants to give out for youth with great ideas. Absolutely. That's a separate point, small side note. But coming back to the point of contextualizing or localizing education, what do you think? Do you think role modeling can play a part in that in terms of, thinking through what I could be a little bit down the line, or what paths are out there, not just in terms of what the textbook might say or the digital book might say, but rather some concrete examples of a human who's a few years ahead of me, but from a similar background?
Absolutely. There's so much power in role modeling. I think that for many of us sitting here right now, we are a product of the people that have influenced our lives and our journeys. I know I certainly am. And when you see someone that looks like you, has come from the same background as you, it makes the process and the journey and the trajectory that you aspire towards all the more attainable. So I think that role modeling is very important, but even more so, role models that are accessible. Yeah. Not just people that inspire us from afar, but ones that we can engage with, ones that we can learn from.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, as inspiring as Elon Musk might be,
yes.
It might not really be the right fit. And we see this when we think of this incredible course content that's being developed in, we love them, but in Silicon Valley, and then we try and re-bring that onto the local context in certain parts of sub-Saharan Africa or on Youth on the Move, and it doesn't quite fit, but it can be adapted, I guess, relatively cost-effectively too.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a need to really reinvent the wheel. Hearing about what Rolake has developed with Jobberman, I'm just, my brain is sparkling and thinking that could so very well be applied to my context in Somalia as well too. If we invested more into actually scaling innovations that came from the continent, from similar contexts, that face similar situations, we'd be able to leapfrog ahead.
I want to chip in on role modeling. I think, as I said earlier, stories build the world. When I was a young man in Nigeria, a little boy, we would watch Bollywood films and we would watch American films. Yeah. We would enjoy the Bollywood films. They were 3 hours long, sometimes 4 hours. We would watch it from beginning to the end. We would cry, we would wail, very emotional. But not one day did we ever want to go to India. But we would watch American films, and American films sold the glitz and the glam and the big and the huge. It made us believe that dreams were made and born in America. And so we all wanted to go to America, but we consumed both films. And so I think in terms of role modeling, we must continue to tell stories of those who've gone before us. I have a book that I wrote this year, released on the International Day of the Girl Child, called African Power Girls. I wrote the book because I wanted to tell my goddaughters, 3 of them, and my nieces, stories of great African women who've gone before them. So before the world puts them into boxes and put glass ceilings over them, they would realize that there was nothing they could not do, and that women before them have done it. On the continent, we've also done something called the Future Awards Africa. For the last 16 years, we've used peer-to-peer role modeling, and it's a model that anyone can adapt. Instead of getting some Elon Musk type situation, we look for a Rolake, a 30-year-old, a 27-year-old, a 26, a 19-year-old. So when other 19-year-olds hear that this 19-year-old has raised $1 billion for their business, they realize that every hour they sleep is a waste of their time. And finally, we must pay attention to the formats that the current generation consumes information. Short formats, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, videos, gaming, cartoons, and short documentaries. So the problem sometimes is the disconnect. You want to tell a good story, but you use the wrong format. Very important.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to clarify. I think we're all in agreement. Sleep is important. No, sleep is important.
It is important, but not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah.
No.
A little sleep, a little slumber.
Thank you. That was really interesting. We talked about that role model. For me, I used to watch this show called Dragon's Den or Shark Tank growing up, and I was maybe 16, and you'd start listening, and I started criticizing, and I became an expert in criticizing people, and it took a few years before you'd be like, okay, let's start my own thing, and then that might not work. But then a few years later, you start something more significant, hopefully. That was so. If we think of the same thing happening with what you described, makes so much sense.
Absolutely.
And I love the idea of having people. The $1 billion startup idea is amazing, and it's that flagship piece. But I think it's my view, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we also need those micropreneurs, the side hustle that happens.
Yes.
And that is cool.
Yeah,
that is success
absolutely.
too. We don't just need to raise 50 million to be amazing.
Absolutely. And you just gave me something now. We also need to tell the stories of failure and comebacks. Right. We don't tell enough stories about failure and comebacks, and that's important. So when a young person starts something and he fails, he knows there's redemption and he can come back. And finally, when we talk about role modeling, and you mentioned the micro success, sometimes the problem with young people is that we want Elon Musk to mentor us. Elon Musk is already mentoring you. You read his books, you follow his Twitter, you look at his comments, his interviews. All the famous people are already mentoring you. But there's an aunt in your family. There was a man down the road who was a clerk 10 years ago, who's now the managing director of a company. How did he go from being a clerk to managing director? We ourselves have to pay attention to stories that don't necessarily have the glitz and the glam, real stories of hard work, and tenacity to success. So it's up to the young people to look out for those stories as well, and not put themselves under the Instagram-like pressure.
I hear you. It's hard though, this Instagram-like pressure. I mean, when I it's a tough. I mean, I don't know. In the audience, you think of a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old today with access to TikTok, and these algorithms are so targeted on their interests, and you see how this world of instant gratification and how everyone is happier than you all the time. It's hard, right? It's hard, and I think that's why it's so important we push forward these stories of failure. Because and comebacks, because when I started, I read a lot of books on these successful entrepreneurs, and it's amazing how successful, how quickly they all were, and how they almost never made any mistakes, and they came up with so many brilliant ideas on human resourcing, on management styles, on leadership, and you're like, wow, that's impressive. But it's always rewritten. I mean, there's always a certain degree of rewriting, which is why if we can convey these authentic stories from other youth, and it's totally doable with the technology that exists. And
absolutely. I'm sure Rolake has some examples to share.
Yeah, and we also do need to connect on those short stories. Yes, do you have any examples to share?
Of failure?
Of failure? No.
Many.
No. On role modeling, for your prospective applicants, particularly youth.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and everything Ilwad and Adebola were talking about, it resonates a lot. I mean, we're very lucky in Nigeria because in Nigeria there are 6 major banks, and today, I believe 4 of them, the managing directors are women. So when we're talking about black female leadership in Nigeria, we're very lucky because we see it everywhere. And when you grow up as a young woman in Nigeria, your mom has 2 jobs and your aunt has 3 jobs. And you know, when they were asking me in primary school, what do you want to be? I wanted to be a lawyer because I would see my aunt with her barrister's wig on. And I moved to the UK when I was 10, and I moved back to Nigeria about 5 years ago. And I mean, I love the UK, it's home as well for me, but one thing about Nigeria is you do have that energy. Yeah. So as much as, of course, things are not perfect, and there's a lot of challenges to come over in Nigeria, especially in the north, which is predominantly Muslim. There is a lot of role modeling, and I think, yeah, we just need to continue in the way that we've started. Adebola is doing similar work, and of course, Jobberman is part of a group across Africa. Yeah, and I also have to say, even in the north of Nigeria, because I do spend quite a bit of time there, when I go there, I'm often more inspired than I am in the south, which is more well-known outside of Nigeria, because you meet these Muslim young women, and they're so bright, just as engaged. They know exactly what's going on as much as any young woman in the south of Nigeria. And yeah, there just seems to be this energy of we're going to make it. We're going to be whoever we want to be. So yeah, I believe in what's already happening, and I think we just need to continue in the same way in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. And one thing we are doing at Jobberman is we have a goal that 70% of these 5 million trained should be women. We're currently on about 40%, but it's really a big focus area for us, and we're going to keeping that as part of our goals over the next few years.
Thank you so much for that. We got slightly sidetracked. I was asking, because it was really interesting, so forgive me for that. I was asking Ilwad, I wanted to ask Ilwad about, we talked about giving youth from marginalized backgrounds opportunities, but I wanted to ask you about how can we bring their voices consistently to the forums that they need to be heard at. I'm a global shaper from the World Economic Forum, and when you look at the members or the participants that then get to go to Davos and the rest, though from the outside it may look like a very diverse group of people. I mean, this is between us. If you look behind, right? If just here, if you look behind, there's a lot of commonalities despite the fact that it's 150 plus countries. Yeah. How can we prepare but also give the voices of marginalized youth?
I mean, well, inclusion will never look like having every single person at the table, but it is critical that you have people at the table that then are connected to an ecosystem that can trickle down those opportunities, that information and the opportunities that are shared at places like Davos down to more underserved communities. And I think we also have a moral responsibility that conversations that we have like this don't only happen here in Dubai or online, but they become decentralized, that we host them in communities where people don't have access to visas, where they can't travel, or that we also have pop-ups in these locations. Including marginalized young people means bringing these services to them as well too. I think that is where it has to start, knowing that they are coming from more difficult backgrounds as well too. And I think that there's a lot of progress being made that way. With Generation Unlimited, when we were designing the initiative, we started with global consultations, both online and offline, around the world, and we heard directly from young people about what they care about. And that helped us shape the direction of the initiative. We have young people that represent marginalized backgrounds on the board, and I think that's also really important when we look at the decision-making opportunities of young people as well too, that they're not just beneficiaries of these processes, but they are a part and parcel of the design and the strategic direction of these initiatives as well too. It's not that hard to include people that are coming from marginalized backgrounds. It just requires a concerted effort and to match resources to the rhetoric of inclusion. It has to have intentionality.
Yeah, that really resonates. And I was just thinking while you're speaking about these Rewired hubs happening during the next Rewired. I don't know if there's organizers of Rewired, like ideas for the next version, hubs around to make sure that there really is a representation, or maybe conversations happening in parallel that can happen here. Yeah. We're running out of time, but I think there's so much more to talk about. There's so much more to cover. I think my takeaway and my hope is that there's such great work happening, and this is the idea behind Generation Unlimited, of bringing together partners united on the values of putting youth first, serving that real stakeholder, and doing more together. So if there are people in the audience that find any of these initiatives potential partners, please do reach out, and I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay. And hopefully we can do something together, because clearly no one organization has the resources to tackle this huge problem alone. Thank you everyone for your time.